How's it hanging?
Hello survivors and welcome to Survivor's Guild, the only channel that determines your odds of surviving 2005's viscera-abounding torture flick, Hostel. So stay tuned till the end for your survival stats. I'm your sharp-dressed slasher turned Slovakian prostitute, GhostFake. Now I hope you like free expensive Slovakian prostitutes. The sex is free, but what follows will cost you an arm and a leg, because this movie is getting spoiled. Hostel, written and directed by Eli Roth and starring Jay Hernandez, Richardson, Eythor Gudjonsson, Barbara Nedeljakova, and Jana Kaderabkova. Hostel is about two American friends and the Icelandic dude that they just met as they travel around Europe, fulfilling their carnal desires, before ending up in Slovakia where they become the objects of someone else's. I saw this movie back in 2006 and walked out of the theater absolutely disgusted, unable to move past the blood and puke to appreciate how terrifying this movie truly is. Sure, the gore is pretty fantastic and over the top, but the story and the predicament our flawed protagonists find themselves in is incredibly dark and intensely terrifying, and the reason why I never leave my house. We open up to our main characters, Americans Josh and Paxton, who are traveling through Europe in an epic conquest to have as much sex as possible, and their Icelandic friend Ollie, who they met on their trip and who has tagged along ever since. About half of this movie is definitely torture porn, but the first half is definitely just porn. We find out over the course of the opening of the movie that Josh is getting over a bad breakup and Paxton is trying to get him laid to get over her, but paying for sex is not something that Josh is into. And after visiting a recreational shop, a club, and a brothel, they head back to their hostel, which has locked its doors for the evening. And when the neighbors turn against them for making so much noise after curfew, a friendly bystander invites them into his place, where they encounter a couple that is so blitzed out of their minds that they don't even realize that people are watching them. And this dude named Alex, who tells them that they must visit a hostel in Slovakia, as it has the best women. Alex proceeds to show them pictures from his conquests, causing them to change their plans of going to Barcelona and to head to that hostel in Slovakia. The next day, they board a train and this Dutch businessman joins their cabin where he brags about his daughter, and then makes some weird comments about eating with his hands.
People have lost their relationship with food.
It's important enough for me to mention because it comes back later. But when the Dutch dude gets a little too handsy with Josh, he gets embarrassed and leaves. They arrive at the hostel and check in, but when they enter their room, it is still occupied by two beautiful Slovakian women named Natalia and Svetlana, who invite the boys to join them at the spa.
It's okay. The room is yours. We are going to the spa.
We here learn that Natalia is originally from Italy and Svetlana is originally from Prague, and neither have clothes. Later that night, when everyone has found clothes, they head to a club and party with the girls. Josh heads outside to take a hit of his inhaler when he gets harassed by the little rascals. But before they destroy Josh for not giving them anything, the Dutch dude tosses them some coins and they scatter. He warns Josh that here the majority of crime is committed by kids, and that it's good to be prepared to give them something.
Here, children commit the most crime. They don't care. They will attack anyone.
I mean, they didn't look that dangerous, and Josh offers to buy him a drink. Josh apologizes for how he reacted on the train, and then proceeds to mix signals. They then head back to the hostel, and Josh proceeds to clear up those signals with Natalia, if you know what I mean. The next day, Ollie is nowhere to be seen, and the boys ask the front desk where he went, and he simply tells them that he checked out that morning.
Yeah, he checked out this morning.
What do you mean, like he took his passport to go out?
Paxton tries to call him, but has to leave a message. And a little later, Connor runs over to them and shows them a picture she received from her friend Yuki, with a picture of her and Ollie, and a message saying that they left together. And Paxton has her forward the picture to him. Later, as Josh and Paxton walk through town, Paxton shares a story about his childhood where he watched a girl drown, making the girl in the story deposit number 1 into the meat bank.
All I knew was that this little girl was dead, and her mother's life was ruined.
Because Thorough is my middle name. The little rascals show back up and are even less scary in daytime, and Josh passes on what he learned from the Dutch dude to Paxton. And later still, Paxton gets a text from Ollie saying that he went home, where we transition to Ollie's severed head and mangled body, sitting in the meat bank at deposit number 2. And the guy who sent him that picture then heads into the room with Yuki, and this is an assumption, but I think it's safe to say that he deposits her into the meat bank at deposit number 3. Back at the hostel, Pax and Josh make plans with Kana to leave the next morning, and head to the train together. The girls show up and invite them to the club again, but Josh is too concerned about Ollie and his bizarre departure. But Paxton tells Josh that they really didn't know Ollie all that well, and that maybe he's not who they thought he was. And they go to the club with the girls since it's their last night there. After a bunch of drinks, Josh isn't feeling so good, so he calls it a night early and heads to their room to pass out. Back at the club, Paxton isn't feeling hot either, and when he goes to find a bathroom, he accidentally gets locked in a pantry. Cut back over to Josh, who wakes up in a dungeon with a bag over his head, and cuffed to a chair. The dude uses his drill on Josh several times before it's revealed that the man who's torturing him is the Dutch guy. He explains that he always wanted to be a surgeon, but that the boards wouldn't pass him because he's got a bad case of the shakes. So he joined the Elite Hunters Club, which is this universe's version of the Make-A-Wish Foundation, and he pays good money to live out his fantasies of being a surgeon.
Surgeon. He holds the very essence of life in his hands.
Josh begs him to let him go, and he kind of agrees. But the audio of this movie is all messed up, because the unlocking of the cuffs sounds a hell of a lot like Achilles tendon slicing. Eli, you need a new sound guy. The Dutch dude opens the door for him. What a gentleman. But when Josh tries to stand up, we see that his Achilles tendons have been unlocked. And he falls to the floor. The Dutch dude comes back and finishes what he started by unlocking Josh's throat, unlocking him into the meat bank at deposit number 4. The next morning, Paxton gets kicked out of his sleeping pantry and heads back to the hostel, where the front desk tells him that he already checked out.
Didn't you check out?
No, not yet.
He checks back in and heads to his room, where he finds 2 new girls who say that they are heading to the spa and invite him to join them.
It's okay. We are going to the spa.
That sounds familiar. Deja vu. He goes for a walk around town to look for Josh, but finds a familiar backdrop, namely the backdrop of the picture that Connor received of Yuki and Ollie. He finds Svetlana and Natalia at the pub, looking all addicted, and he asks where his friends are. They tell him that Josh and Ollie are at an art show, and he tells them to take him there. Natalia has her handler drive them to an abandoned-looking facility. Once inside, Paxton heads down a dark hallway, only to find the Dutch dude performing surgery on Josh. Oh, good thing Slovakia has universal healthcare. Medical debt is the worst. And when Paxton starts yelling at Natalia, a couple dudes grab him and drag him down the hallway. As they drag him through the torture farm, he sees deposit 5, 6, 7, and 8 before the men drag him into a room and lock him to a chair. A little later, 2 men come into the room and force him to speak.
Do you want me to say? American.
Verifying that he's American. And after the guard leaves, Paxton starts pleading with the man in German.
Jedes Mal, wenn du deine Augen schließt.
So the man has a gag put in his mouth. The dude starts threatening Paxton with a chainsaw, but the threat causes Paxton to puke, which, because of the gag, he starts choking on it. Oh, how embarrassing. The dude puts down the chainsaw to save his victim, and picks his chainsaw back up once the gag is off Paxton so he can puke freely. But in his haste, his chainsaw nicks Paxton's hand, cutting half of it off. Lucky for Paxton, it was the half that kept him from sliding out of those handcuffs. Unlucky for Paxton, it was the part of his hand accounting for numbers 9 and 10. What a crying shame. But when the dude charges at Paxton, he slips on the finger peels and gets cut into by his own chainsaw. How ironic. Paxton then grabs the gun from the table and headshots this dude into the meat bank at deposit number 9. But Paxton wouldn't know that since he can only count to 8. Paxton then uses his German to call in the guard, whom he then shoots into the meat bank at deposit number 10. Classic. He then puts on the dude's outfit and leaves the room, but when more guards come down the hallway, he hides in a room and bumps into a cart that seems to have deposits 11 through 15, which he then hides on when he hears someone approaching. The guy wheels the cart into a room where they dismember the bodies, where Paxton runs into Josh. And as the dude... Stop looking at me. And as the dude dismembers and burns the bodies, Paxton pulverizes him into the meat bank at deposit number 16. I'm assuming, of course, but it's hard to imagine the hammer could get that bloody without having inflicted a fatal head wound. Paxton flees and hides in a changing room before opening a locker and stealing someone's clothes. Stealing clothes? Paxton, you're a monster. Meanwhile, a guard finds the mess Paxton left in his wake and alerts the rest of the facility. Back in the locker room, Paxton finds out about American exceptionalism and runs into one of the elite hunting members, who mistakes Paxton for a fellow elite hunter.
Feels so ridiculous in this thing, but I guess you need it, huh?
He shows him his elite tattoo before he heads off to kill someone.
Yeah, that's too American, dude. I'm going old school.
Paxton goes to make his escape with 8 guards everywhere, and he finds a car with the keys in it. But when he hears a woman screaming from inside the building, he heads back in to save her. He runs to the room to find Kana being tortured by the guy he was just talking to a few minutes ago. He shoots the guy, and for fun, I'll count him since his fall was so dramatic that if he's not dead, he should be embarrassed. Embarrassing this guy into the meat bank at deposit number 17. He unlocks Kana, whose eye is disgustingly hanging from her head, and he asks her what she wants him to do.
What do you want me to do, Hannah?
and he then proceeds to cut off her eye, which, I'm willing to wager, is not what she wanted him to do. He escapes with her and they steal a car and they head to the train station. They get to town and Paxton notices Natalia and Svetlana before Alex, the guy from the beginning of the movie who sets them up, walks up to them. Paxton hits the gas and hits all three of them, and judging by Svetlana, I'm going to assume that she and Alex head trauma into the meat bank at deposits 18 and 19 before the guards drive over Natalia, landing her at deposit number 20. Paxton then drives up to the little rascals, all 8 of them, and gives them the entire bag of candy in the car. The guards following them then pull up to the kids, who are even less scary during the day and chewing bubblegum, and tell them to get out of the way. The kids then attack the men with stones and crush their skulls into the meat bank at deposits 21 and 22. I take it back. These kids are terrifying. Paxton and Kana ditch the car when they pull up to a police checkpoint and run the rest of the way to the train station. Once there, they notice all of the elite hunting guards and they try to look for another way to board the train in incognito mode. But Kana catches a glimpse of herself in a reflection and decides she'd rather die than be ugly. It's shallow, I know. And jumps in front of a train at deposit number 23, stealing everyone's attention and allowing Pax to board the train. Once on the train, Paxton hears a man talking about food relationships.
I believe people have lost their relationship with food.
And at the next stop follows him into the bathroom. Paxton tosses the elite card by his shoes, and when the Dutch dude grabs it, Paxton grabs his hand and gets his fingers back. Anyone want to tell him that those fingers aren't going to work for him? He'll figure it out. He then barges into his stall and dunks his head into his own stew, and then unlocks his throat, landing him into the meat bank at deposit number 24. Paxton then boards the train and leaves the station, and the movie ends. Now let's take a look at our main characters and the death that surrounds them to determine your odds of surviving this movie. We start off our meat bank deposits with the post-mortem story that Paxton tells to Josh, yarning that drowned girl into the meat bank at deposit number 1. Ollie then bails on the boys at deposit number 2. Yuki bails on Kana at deposit number 3. Josh unlocks at deposit number 4. And the hallway torture rooms account for deposits 5 through 8. Chainsaw Dude ironics in at deposit number 9. And the first guard falls for a classic trick at deposit number 10. We then count up the cart that accounts for deposits 11 through 15. And then the dismember/burn guy bludgeons in at deposit number 16. That weird dude falls dramatically into the meat bank at deposit number 17. Svetlana and Alex head trauma in at deposits 18 and 19. Natalia survives getting hit by 1 car, but 2 cars is too many at deposit number 20. These guards cave in at deposits 21 and 22 at the hands of these scary rascals, and Kana dies in the name of beauty at deposit number 23. And we wrap up our meat bank deposits with Dutch Dude getting Dutch throned at deposit number 24 into the meat bank. Now let's take a look at our survivors. We've got Paxton, and that means that out of a total of 25 characters, only 1 survives, giving you a 4% chance of surviving this movie. Given those odds, how much would it cost to torture you to death asking for a friend? Let me know in the comments below. And if this is your first time on my channel, go ahead and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of my future videos. And don't forget to join us on January 29th in the Monster Fam Discord, where we will be streaming Dead Alive. And after the movie is over, we'll be having a Q&A here on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter and YouTube for more information. And a huge thanks to all my patrons for helping make all of this possible. And congratulations to Lobotomite and Papi Ulio for winning the first round of GhostFake masks. I will get those sent out to you shortly. And as always guys, thanks and don't die.